because I've been teaching and I've been seeing this in students. When students come in, they go through a process, they become something. But large number of students that I can see, and they're coming out of, this is institution at postgraduate level, so they are completing a certain kind of study and coming. But I think they're quite disconnected with the past. There could be many reasons for that. Again, the educational system, the kind of things that we are following, the kind of social environment that is it, everything contributes to it. But this disconnection with the past and being able to, I'm not saying you have to live, everybody has to create and live in a sea of information. So it's not about information, but the essence of what were the kind of practices or good things that have happened and how we can reconnect and rekindle, those things. So I think that's one area which we really need to look onto and work, so that we can reconnect somewhere with our past. We can, this whole thing about, I want to do art, so I will just, Europe is the only place I can go to and only place I can ask for some money from. I think that's from my point of view, it's a detrimental thing. We need to find producers in our country. If our country is doing good, if there is so much of business, we better find producers, and we better find producers who also want to wants Indian cinema to develop. Not just in the name of copying Hollywood and calling ourselves some kind of wood and making multi crore films. That is not really the kind of development or the kind of cinema that we seek. The richness should be in idea, in story, in the kind of humanity that we imbibe. And that's also our real tradition. So we should somewhere connect to our real tradition.
So we have Sandeep Chatterjee ji. He is HOD of Direction in FTII. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much.
So interestingly, I was fortunate to have a tea made from your hand. So this connects me to something about, you are into direction, and I would like to listen from you about this concept of auteur and, director. So
I'll tell you briefly about tea first. That I think tea is one of the most refined sensibilities, and it's a very ritualistic thing. I really like making the tea myself, and using your hands, the amount of tea leaf you put. And I love Darjeeling tea coming from Bengal. I was lucky to grow up with some Darjeeling tea around. So how it brews, how long you should keep it, all that sense of timing, and to be able to kind of feel that flavor in your throat. I think these are things quite connected to the kind of stuff that makes an author. You need to understand, and these are things which are not exactly always very easily expressed verbally, but it's more in the senses. To understand life, to extract life, I find this quite similar. So I think your ability to be able to cook, to be able to do things with your hand, to have a sense of approximation with your fingers, how much you should and how much you shouldn't, is very important for developing yourself as an author.
Interesting. So, coming back to your young age when you joined FTII, what was your concept? As in, what was of course coming from Kolkata, Satyajit Roy and Khatek sir and all this. It's quite natural to think. But originally, what was your thought about when you joined?
When I joined very early. I was very young then. My main thing was I was deeply interested in photography, which is still photography. So parallel to my college, I was pursuing a separate program where I could, Calcutta, there was an organization, I think it is still there, called the Photographic Association of Dum Dum. They used to offer a 3-year diploma program, and there were some very good teachers there. So I really, my first love was photography, and that's how I eventually got connected to cinema. Uh, of course, Satyajit Ray to a great extent. I found Ghatak also because there was a Ritik Cine Society in the same locality that I lived in, so I saw it quite early. But Satyajit Ray, not just through films, but equally through his books and
illustrations, and
stories and the literature, illustrations also. So you get connected. I got connected to cinema automatically through that. But it was also a fact that I was deeply disinterested in my academics, what I was doing, and the kind of environment that was there in mid-80s. All that pushed me towards, so I decided in my +2 only that I don't want to pursue academics, part of which I resent it now maybe. Maybe I could have endured it, but there at that point the thing was very genuine. I genuinely didn't want to do that, and I was lucky that at the age of 20, before almost 21, I got into FTII on my first attempt, and there onwards there has been nothing else. This is the only skill that I have acquired, and somehow I went deeper and deeper into it. So I've managed so far. I've I went to work in the film industry initially for a few years, and I tried to make films independently too, which I do off and on, but with the kind of cinema that I was groomed on, the kind of things that I dreamt, the kind of films that I wanted to do. From 90s, it was not easy to find support. There was no support. With government slowly, winding up all the support system, whatever that was there in our country. So I started teaching. I never thought I would teach, and since the fact that I decided not to take a kind of an academic path and develop it as a career. It was an unusual thing, but SRFTI Kolkata had just started in the late 90s, and one day somebody just called me from there and said that why don't we think you could do a bit in teaching? Why don't you come and come for the interview? So I applied and I appeared for the interview and I got selected, and then I started teaching, and then I started quite enjoying it. I could see that what I was seeking through the ideas that I was seeking through making my own films, and since I was not being able to do that in the way I would want to, I thought this was a very good alternative, for keeping those ideals alive in cinema.
At the time of completion of your course only, you were directing an actor, like Irrfan Khan. So if you could recall those.
I think I was lucky. Things fell into place. Irrfan Khan was not Irrfan Khan at that point, in early, late 80s. He had also just passed out of drama school, maybe just a year or two before I did. And it's there now, but even at that point it was there very intensely, that the first thing after passing out of the acting school, which was one of the only things at that point, to learn acting at the National School of Drama, people always connected to FTII and wanted to do some fresh films, and that's how it went. So my association of Irrfan became like that. He was a very close friend at that point. Later, when Irrfan grew in stature and international fame, etc., and I also kind of beyond a point, got away from the industry and started concentrating more on teaching. So we were not in touch that regularly, but he always remained a very close friend, and the kind of experience that we went through in shooting the film was very, very dear to, I think, both of us. We went to shoot, we had a kind of it's a short film, so we had a bare narrative storyline. We went there and we saw there was a flood. And the whole area around that village in about 60-70 kilometers from Pune was, the rivers were overflowing, some of the roads were submerged, And at the same time, the authority in FTI told me that you have gone to shoot, but if you come back, then that's it. Then you can't. There is no going back and shooting it again. So whatever you can, you do within that time frame and come back. So we had to continuously improvise and shoot, and that is where I could see, even though Irfan was very young at that time and kind of beginning, but the kind of open mind that he had, and he was like what you would typically call an intelligent actor that you need for cinema. So he would pick up and understand, what I was trying to do in essence through the narrative, but not being able to follow that narrative because of eventualities. But still, whatever we could, so it became a fractured little thing which we connected up later. Irfan was extremely cooperative. So, and I was also lucky to, other than Irfan, I also had Anita Kanwar in my diploma film, and she's also a very extraordinary actor, I think. So I learned a lot from those experiences, and I still treasure that, that experience. Though it's many years back, it's more than 30 years back, it's so fresh in my mind, I sometimes feel it's just, a couple of years back.
So, talking about that, how was your experience directing a feature film?
I have not done a feature film yet. I have worked on a feature film. I have mostly done short films and documentaries as and when I could out of my teaching schedule, sometimes on my own initiative. Feature film I have not managed to do it. It's not that I've written feature films, but I never, to be frank, managed to gather the money yet. I'm looking forward to it. I want to do a long format film. As an EP, I'm averse to feature film making or anything. I'm hoping to do that soon. And Kumar Sahni was like my guru, like a teacher, but at the same time like a family member, like a friend in every sense too. We have been extremely supportive and extremely encouraging for me. It was a real blessing for me, in fact. My life had never been a cakewalk really, but being with Kumar Sahni was one of the most wonderful things that has happened in my life. So I assisted him as his chief assistant in this feature film that he did in Calcutta in 1996. The film is called Charodhya. That was one of the last films that NFDC did, I think. Kumar allowed me to do a lot, and I really learned, working under him many things, right? But at the same time, he gave me a lot of free hand. So it was a intense experience, I think, working as a chief assistant with a person like him, a filmmaker like him. So that is my prime feature filmmaking. Other than that, I have written a couple of feature scripts. I have somehow not managed to gather money to shoot my feature film yet. You understand, I hope, because I started doing a job pretty early in life. Job matlab, a teaching job. And that also kind of kept me. Feature needs a very long-term commitment, and since I kept doing this seriously, so my intention is to get into that now.
And interestingly, without much expectation, you also happen to be an actor, and that too a protagonist in a movie.
See, everybody happens to be an actor here in this stage. And that's an old thing, but I think that's a real fact, at least as far as acting goes in cinema. I think anybody can become a cinema actor because cinema is so directly about life and so much embedded in reality that anybody can lend themselves into for the cinema image. So I'm not a trained actor or anything. It happened by chance. I mean, because of my deep interest and engagement in cinema, of course, I have kind of read or tinkered around or practiced with the idea of acting, of how to work with actors, and there are a lot of things it's not about books. You walk and you develop your way slowly. As I told you earlier, I was lucky to work with two very great actors very early on in my life. So you slowly learn to what you are looking for, and how you can work with professional actors, but equally with in that way non-professional actors, or non-actors for that matter. So I ended up acting because I was ex-student of mine at that point. He was making his first feature film. Second reason was, I always believed that within India, we are such a picture of diversity, such a small little picture of the whole world in that sense, that I felt it was a very unique thing, that we should be making more films, and we should be collaborating more inside the country between different regions, instead of keeping it very territorial about this region and east and west and north and south. I mean, the regional industries are there, and that's valid, and that gives employment to many people. So I'm not talking about that, but I'm saying in spirit there could be more collaborative, there could be more crisscrossing. Why can't a filmmaker from Bengal go and make a film in Punjab, and why can't a filmmaker from Punjab go and make a film in Kerala, for that matter?
Talking about that, I think we should talk about Payal, who did. She was your student too.
So she was my student, and I think these are things which should happen more of it, and I'm very glad that Payal could do that, and has found the kind of success and the kind of response she has gathered. So when Vipin said that he wants a Malayalam film, but the story is partly set in Calcutta, and he wants to develop the film in a hybrid way as such. So I was curious. I never did it for any money or recognition or anything. It was primarily to help Vipin. But in the process, I realized it was an extremely learning experience for me. Because when you engage with acting, you end up talking to yourself. There are so many things, so many barriers in our mind about our own image, and I'm not a cosmetic kind of a person. I've never really kind of shaped myself up, and not into that. But still, when you have to face the camera, there is a churning that happens inside. I quite enjoyed that churning, and also you develop a much more deeper insight, that when you actually do what you are asking others to do. So I think it was a great experience, and I enjoyed it. And later on, we traveled around with the film here and there. That was also very endearing, in a way. We went to Vladivostok.
Such responses, those you said, it was quite enlightening.
I never, the way, for example, people in Russia and that's really the ideal about cinema, that people from completely disconnected somewhere else in some other part of the world, how they reach out, how they kind of connect, how they kind of come and express, how they find, and it's purely a human thing, which was very, very wonderful to see when we traveled to Vladivostok in Russia. They were just starting a very good festival then there, and this film was one of the films to be shown in a way. And the kind of response I got there, which I never experienced ever before. I never worked as an actor. But that showed, I'm saying it was not just about film or acting or anything. It gave me a much more larger picture of how things are. That experience of going and being able to see how people connect across borders or across distances.
While audience have a connect with their experiences and the movie they are watching, even though it's a drastically different culture there and here. Let's talk about critic part of it, being a director from the direction side. How do you look at it? I'm not talking about the social media reviews which are spread from, and that's not that's not what I mean to say. Like the actual critic, how they look at film, because it's like, when you teach direction and when you look at from the other side of it, like the audience and the critic, how do you
See, I'll tell you very frankly, I think we are in India, or let's say in the current film culture in India, we are mostly living in a kind of devoid of any critical atmosphere. It's either a kind of and I think to a great extent it has happened because of social media and the kind of environment that developed post 90s, that either it's complete affirmation and you don't ruffle feathers and you just do and nod and go ahead, and if you critique something you almost become somebody's enemy, that kind of a thing. And I think that has done a lot of harm to actual development of our own cinema, because the critique is neither bitching nor is it supposed to be just scratching each other's back and just networking with each other.
what should ideally be they doing?
I think one should be able to freely speak about it. That is the whole purpose of films. That you do something, you say something, and we should be able to exchange ideas. We should be able to, and that's how you grow. That's how a filmmaker who faces criticism can also kind of realign within herself some things, and that's how you kind of walk ahead towards finding a new language, or to do things in different ways. I think that has been missing, and that's why it's a very vacant film culture in India, in spite of which very painful, because India is one of the oldest filmmaking countries in the world. We don't even it is true, and yet we almost don't realize that it's almost parallel to Hollywood or any other European that we have been making films for so long, and film culture is very deep rooted in India. The film history, the grand film history that we have speaks enormously about Indian cinema. But with all that in place, if we see the kind of film culture we are in right now, I think that's a sad picture, and we need to do something about it. So I am more and more, I think that's why I look forward to the young people, or not so young people, who come as students and whom we keep talking to, and with the only hope that things have to be different. We have to develop a free voice, a critical voice, and we have to speak an appropriate language through cinema, which addresses our times.
This could be a little vague question, and probably the answer I'm not sure. But what would you be looking at? The prospective students who are looking for learning direction, because it's not that easy for any of the students to say, like, okay, I have been watching movies for these many years, or but that may not qualify them to get an entry into FTII. So what would you be,
See, for me, I try to keep things simple, generally. I will look for, if I have to select, I will look for people with wherever, whichever background, whichever they are coming from, at least if they can have a little open mind, and if they are at least ready to ask a few questions. If you are not ready to ask a few questions, if you are not ready to actually look around and see the ground that you are standing on, what story would you tell? So you need to have a mind like that. That's what we look for. That people who can, who first of all are interested in looking around and are not rigid and blinkered, because I'm not saying they themselves become like that, but sometimes the kind of education we go through, or the social experiences, etc., the social environment, all that makes us blinkered in a way. So at least, people who are ready to question that and question themselves and realize uh, where we are, what is happening around us. At least if I see that, I think then I know that there is good enough reason why a person like that should become a student here. Anyway, unfortunately we have very few seats and it's quite competitive that way. I don't like the competition part, but that's a reality. And I look for students like that.
That sparks me to talk about, check with you on the truth part, which I've always been, talking about, like, which I am also very much interested. Not just about the filmmaking part, because in life also it's very much important for anyone to be, within family, between friends, and we have been watching movies like Bergman's the other day, Wild Strawberry. So looking back, that being true, and how do you define that in terms of movie direction and filmmaking?
See, one hand, we have to realize that the movies or images and sounds, they're potentially extremely hazardous. That it can, it is deeply, in fact, impactful, and the way it can damage our mind, the way it can completely control our mind and body, or somebody remotely can control our mind or body through images and sound. And we are living in the middle of exactly that, though often don't we realize that how our choices and how we look at the world, everything is guided by that, largely by the media and the kind of social media these days, and the kind of propaganda that floats around. So we live in a sea of lies, and that has really intensified through the second half of the 20th century, I think, and this culture of lies, and it has come to an extent that that we have to be really we have to develop some ways in our eyes and ears to be able to read and to be able to develop that ability to extract the truth out of how things are, because everything is suspect apparently. Everything is kind of prone to lies. So the unique thing about cinema is that cinema was always on one hand is about reality, but truth happens through, you arrive at a truth as you look at things. And the unique thing about cinema is some of the inherent thing about cinema is one kind of a lie. The cinema image itself, it is an illusion. You're not really seeing movement. What you're seeing is an illusion of movement. What you're seeing is a series of still frames, which because of a certain about our eyes, about persistence of vision, that we are seeing it as movement. So through an elusive thing, how we can arrive at a truth, I think that's one of the most unique things of 20th century, and it's also it's a magical instrument, I think, that way.
And at the same
We
time,
need to handle these things little sensibly, and that's why it's a kind of a thing like nuclear energy kind of a thing. So in wrong hands, it can be extremely hazardous and extremely dangerous, and it can devastate our lives. But with these images and sounds, you can really, I think, change people for good. You can address humanity. You can be so much more compassionate, and so much you can feel so much more things in a better way, emotions. Because otherwise, we also, living in this world of lies and utter violence, we tend to get numb. We tend to get inert. We tend to accept things. cinema can cleanse all that, and it can make you question and regain your faith in life. I believe that.
Who are the directors in the current scenario, especially from India? People are looking at South, like Malayalam, for example. There are things coming up. So, anything that interestingly, that you find inspiring, that you suggest people to, keep on looking for these things.
See, without getting into the specifics, I generally feel, and I'm sorry for that, but I genuinely feel that we are living in a very vacant cultural scenario, and as much as I would love to, I don't see yet any very strong, the way, in spite of, and this state of affair is throughout the world, but still there are instances of filmmaking, and purely in terms of the language that they're speaking and what they're addressing, that kind of cinema, in spite of our long cinema history, in spite of we having absolute masters of cinema in the past, I think it is missing right now. So I'm sure, and I've not seen, that much of contemporary Malayalam film, since you mentioned Malayalam film. I have heard there are some but this is whole thing is we are living in a time where we are speaking things in a comparative sense, that in comparison to certain kind of Hindi films, Malayalam films is much better. I'm sure it's much better, but is that good enough? Is Malayalam films right now being able to surpass the kind of films, say for example, G. Arvindan made? I have a little doubt about that. I know for certain in Bengal we are not being able to do that. What Ritvik Ghatak had made, for example, till 1976, we are not being able to even cross that kind of a language. So what has happened? A kind of poverty, I would say, that we have been inflicted with. It could be poverty of imagination. It could be poverty of looking at it, and also filmmaking. If filmmaking is just about style and just about your own individual fame and or how much money you earn,
and the brand
that
culture.
will take us, brand culture, that will take us nowhere. Or you say the right thing at the right time, which will click with the networks. That will not take our cinema anywhere. Our masters have not made films like that, or with that kind of a mindset. So I think we need to really readdress that. Yeah, and with social media, there is this immense, thing about a kind of what is commonly referred to as wokeness or woke culture. So initially I ignored that term, but then eventually I could see that it's a real disease of our time, and how do we find a remedy for that? I think we need to really readdress ourselves, reconnect with, we need to pick up inspiration from the right things. And perhaps that kind of a thing, cinema education could help in doing that. So that in near future we can do the kind of films that we were supposed to do. So in contemporary cinema, you look at even you look at Carlos Regadas, you look at Nuri Bilge Ceylan, post 2000 with the new millennium also the kind of films. Some authors who have spoken up with a very clear voice and with a very, very individual voice, I would say. I think that has not, in that respect, has not happened in Indian cinema. I'm ready to look into it, dig into it, and see for what good reasons that is happening. But the fact is, we are not making that kind of film. We are not even making, the kind of film that Ritvik Ghatak or G. Aravindan had been doing. For an example, I'm saying. I don't intend to be, very controversial in that sense. Earlier I wouldn't have cared, but now I do care, and I don't want to. And it's not about hurting anybody, but I think we should be able to speak what we feel or what we see as the reality. There can be flaws in our own observations, and we need to talk more in that case, exchange more ideas. but this is how I feel about Indian cinema, and I think we need to come out of this very soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's wonderful listening to you.